Táimid ar nais le séasúr a cethair do Comhrá Le Tomás. Bílinn gachtaí céadaoin I gcóir le EIRGRID. Be mé caint le imróí caide agus be cad é cracagain agus Comhrá I caint ar gachnaí buinteach le caid.
I remember saying to him, "This is some trip, Sean Murray. This is unbelievable." he says, "It's not a trip, Muggsy. It's a tour." And I was like, "No, but you know what I mean." He says, "No, I don't."
Proud there again, D&G. Who're there again, D&G. Dalshin Cabana. Yeah, to LNG anyway. Larry and Galvin anyway. That's the brand name anyway.
Tá an seo ag tathúibh an séasúr seo ag EIRGRID. Tá EIRGRID ag stúra angach leicteachas na hÉireann chuig todhchaí íseal chearbóin. Welcome to our Ireland football final episode of Comhrá Le Tomás. Tonight, we are brought to you by EIRGRID. EIRGRID are the official timing sponsors of the GAR Ireland Hurling and Football Championships. Tonight, I'm delighted and honoured to have Joe Brolly and Conor McManus with me. Lads, tá fáilte roimh. Joe, you're laughing already. How's the form?
Great. Can I just say that the new Reynolds invoice that I've taken possession of, not only is it four-wheel drive, but has a marvellous range. and no paperwork is required.
Is she electric or diesel, Joe?
I'm not answering that question.
Lads, I was just going to say...
That was the boys' mistake, you see. They should never have agreed to go in front of the pack. If I had been their lawyer, I would say, no. Stay out of it.
That's above my pay grade now, Joe. The hurling, lads, did you watch it yesterday?
Unbelievable stuff. First half, Kilkenny absolutely threw everything at them, didn't they? And they were still only 3 points ahead at half time, and then second half, Limerick just, I don't know, I'd say they're the best hurling team ever, are they?
Yeah. You see, this leads into the Dublin thing, I think, years ago. Joe, I'd be interested in your viewpoint here. I know they have an unbelievable coach in Kinnerk, and I've heard so much about him, and I think it's vital what he does. I think any successful team, they have the county board, they have everybody is in sync, everybody is just tuned in. But at the end of the day, they have an unbelievable group of players. And something very similar to what Dublin did, they'll possibly achieve something very like it.
Yeah, because don't forget they won 3 under-21s in a row. And they were already marked out as being special. Also, they're very, very big. I mean, I saw them close up a few years ago, and they looked to me like, I know the Irish rugby boys, and that's what they looked like to me. They're physically conditioned. I mean, Kilkenny have some scrawny players. There's no scrawny players playing for Limerick. And, they've reached the stage now that Dublin team reached, which was that they thrive. They only start to play when, the game reaches its most intense period, and when they're at risk. As soon as they're at risk, like that great Dublin team. It was like Michael Dara told me, we were having coffee some weeks ago, and he said, and Michael Dara would still not know half the players that he played against. He said, I used to love it, it was 10 minutes to go, we were 4 points behind, I'd like to nudge Edo and say, what's coming now, And then we get a point and I'd say, you can see it, look, you can see it. And those great teams, it's something much more important. I mean, I had a very interesting chat this morning with Philly McMahon and Gerard Brennan. And I asked them, what does it mean to be a champion? And none of them said winning anything. For them, I think it was fighting for the, fighting to find out who they were as people, fighting for each other to achieve a greater goal that can't really be described. And, I think it'll always remain a mystery what those great teams have, but there's something about loyalty and about committing yourself to this and about you yourself. Teddy Atlas, the great boxing commentator, I was watching that Four Kings documentary. I don't know if you saw it, Conor, about Tommy the Hitman Hearns and Roberto Duran, marvellous Marvin Hagler and Sugar Ray Leonard. This incomparable era when just the hair stood in the back of your neck whenever the announcer was calling the fighters. And Atlas said, people think that boxing's about a collision of skin and bone and weight and talent and all of that. But he said it's nothing to do with that. It's about emotions. It's about personality. It's about two men in the ring fighting to find out who they are, fighting to save themselves. I thought that was a brilliant description of it. You go into this and, it's about character in the end. That's what it's about. I was very disappointed Conor didn't win his All-Ireland because he exemplified that throughout, fighting for something that was bigger than himself and all the humility and modesty that he had. It was a great shame. You know what I mean? Even fucking worse, they gave Sean McCavan the man of the match that day. It still galls me. Because those moments are important. There's something about the integrity of the game, the things that'll be remembered, and long after, we're dead, Conor McManus will still be remembered. There's something about that,
Conor, I suppose it's the last thing you want to be talking about in All-Ireland final week. He obviously went out to win that game. Still galling, he went out with an attitude of pushing up on Dublin, going after Dublin, chasing Dublin, pushing up the field on them. And he really believed you could win it, yeah?
100%. And I suppose, listen, and I don't think too many people outside of us in our camp probably believe that. If you were to read what was in the paper, it wasn't worth our while going to Croke Park, on that particular day. And then if you look at the result, Dublin beat us by 7 points, and if you hadn't seen the game, you would think, well, it went as per the script said it would go, But we fully believed that we were going to beat them, and I suppose that's why the week gone past was so difficult to go through. You know what I mean? It's when you're invested in something like we were for the 2 weeks coming into that semi final, and as you be all season. We were convinced that we could beat Dublin, and I think we put ourselves in a position to go ahead and do it. And I suppose, like many other teams over the years, we just didn't finish it off. We got ourselves, I think, to 12-all with maybe 62 or 3 minutes gone or whatever it was, and in a very short space of time, Dublin had 15-12 on us. And we got it back to 15-13. But they really squeezed us, and the quality that they have really stood out, particularly with the two boys in the middle of the field. Really went after us in that 10-minute spell.
One of the things that comes through from, I'm very friendly with Pat Gilroy, we were in Trinity together, is his admiration for that Monaghan team. And in a strange way, and Conor, you'll remember this because you were playing. In 2010, after you boys had humiliated Dublin, the startled Earwigs Day in Croke Park in 2009 when you beat them off the field. And Gilroy went into a sort of a black depression, didn't leave the house for 6 weeks, all sorts of plans. He's a genius of a fella. And one of the things that he decided to do during that, he rang Seamus McEnany and he said, look, I want to come up behind closed doors to play a challenge game, at least one, against Monaghan, because Monaghan were so tough. And Pat McEnany refereed it. You'll remember this, Conor, obviously. And Pat picked what he called the Dirty Dozen, the new group: Philly McMahon, Dennis Bastick, Michael Dara. And the idea was, to find out who had the character to play for Dublin, who had the character to do this. And Pat said himself, he says, the games were fucking mental, he said. They fought like fuck, he says. And when somebody was fighting, he says, and they were punching the fucking head off each other. And he says that Monaghan team, they were so fucking tough. Because I remember you as Conor, that Ulster final, the day you got fucking battered by McGee. It was right beside me and I was enraged. And I think you took about 6 points off him. And I said, that kid is fucking special. And Gilroy said that after the first game, and Philly and boys like that, they loved it, He said that Bastick and fucking Ono Garano, that Seamus McEnany came over to him and says, Jesus, Pat, why did you get them boys out of prison? And the two teams, I think you played was it 3 or 4 games up there, Connor?
Three, I think. I think it was three. That was 2010. I think we played one. We played one at home. Definitely, I remember. I don't remember full detail, but I remember playing one in Cardiff, and I remember playing another one in Parnell Park. And
Pat
yeah,
said that forwards that team, and all of those Dublin boys, like I said, I met with Philly McMahon and Jerry Brennan today, and they have the highest regard for that Monaghan group because they said, "Geez, if you wanted to test your character, that was a group to test it against." Because I mean, look what Monaghan have achieved, Tomas, in a small county over the last 10 years, and this man, he won't mind me saying it, leading them the way that he did throughout with humility and with respect for his opponents, and to play the way that he did play. Put it to you this way, you'd have been straight into the Dublin team, Connor.
Can I ask you, Conor, one thing? And it always addles me. Like I watched you play Derry, you played Kildare, you played Clare. When you went out, is there somewhere along the line when you played Dublin that you played so high? Somebody has to, obviously, Vinny be in charge. Right, we're going to set up this way. And is it as simple, if it's not a game that you're used to playing throughout the season, it's been a very long season, was it easy for you to click into gear and get that into your head what way you want? Because you had them rattled, well rattled. I know you missed
yeah.
a lot
Well,
of chances. Like,
no, we would probably have a lot of players who are very, very adaptable and very versatile, and we have lads who can play in the half back line, who can play in the half forward line, and lads who can drop into the middle of the field, and we have a lot of legs and lungs, I suppose. I suppose the big thing is that, like, Dublin are no different to any team. If you starve them of the ball, they're not going to enjoy it. You know what I mean? And you could see that from early doors in the game that obviously we play with Rory out the field a wee bit more, and Dublin don't have that option. Like, Cluxton isn't that player. He stays on his line, and I suppose that makes it all the more impressive that Dublin were fit to, stay on top of us and control that last 10 minutes of the game, given the fact that essentially they were playing with 15 on 14 for the whole game. But like having that outlet and bringing Rory out the field and using him as an extra attacker, it's difficult to play against. And I suppose you could see it in Dublin that there was times that probably maybe were frustrated, but again, I go back to their quality. It shone through in the end, and Paul Mannion kicked a massive free for them in the corner. Jack McCaffrey comes up and kicks a point. Brian Fenton kicks 2 scores, one inside the 13-yard line, another one with Darren Hughes at full length trying to block him. You know what I mean? So their quality, I suppose, come through. But I suppose to answer your question, it wasn't necessarily a massive change for what we had done, because we have been playing it like that, for quite a while now, and I suppose it was about trying to raise the quality of it. A lot of what we had produced up to that, we had been gradually getting better and better in some of the games, but we hadn't been great. You could see big steps of improvement against Armagh, and we felt we just needed to get a higher quality in our performance. And if we'd done that, we knew we wouldn't be far away. And as I say, we took it down the stretch and ultimately came up short.
I think also Connor against Derry in Celtic Park that day, that was the real Monaghan. And if Dublin hadn't performed at a very, very high level in that last 10 minutes, they knew that they had to, because Monaghan plays character and courage at all times, and you better be ready for that. And
yeah, I think
that's been a constant with you guys.
To be fair, Cluxton's kickouts were excellent. Like,
miraculous. I mean, it's absolutely. I was laughing watching some.
I was and to be fair, Rory's were too for the whole of the game as well. Like, both keepers put on an exhibition of kickouts. Like, but I was just thinking of it during the week. Fuck Cluxton anyway. If I stayed where he was, you know what I mean?
Because that was his kickouts against Mayo and throughout the game that day, and Mayo have a brilliant kickout presses. I mean, it was as though the ball was being delivered by a drone. I mean, the ball was like inch perfect, and it's constant, and you can't deter him. And
no,
I think that's one of the reasons that they'll beat Kerry, because it's not just the excellence of the kicking, but it's the rigor, it's the absolute rigor, kick out after kick out after kick out.
I have a question. Do you think Cluxton is feared as much now as he was 5, 6, 7 years ago, with the amount of work that's gone into, like, teams have not only, they know if they get possession, they have plan B where they can suck in, they'll get bodies around it. Conor, do you think, like, Began was outstanding in that game, but do you think that probably Cluxton has the influence that he used to?
Probably not, because there's so much work has gone into other teams in terms of kickouts, and if you go to any inter-county training session throughout the country, a large part of that session will be our own kickouts and the opposition kickouts, and that is because of what Cluxton brought to the game 10, 15 years ago. So he probably isn't as feared as he was. He doesn't have the same distance on his kickouts that he had 4 or 5 years ago. So like, for example, when was it Jack McCaffrey's goal in the All Ireland final 3 years ago, where that long kick out went down along the Hogan stand. Dublin don't have that option at the minute because
Conor, would Kerry like to test that on Sunday?
Well, I suggest they will. I suspect they
I think
will.
his kickouts aren't as long as he used to be. Oh, for fuck's sake! two later.
Yeah. Well, listen, he hasn't been kicking them out 65 yards this year yet. Now maybe he's holding on to that till Sunday, but listen, he probably isn't. But it's a result of what he has brought to the game, because every other team has had to get to that level.
In a way, the fortunes of that Monaghan team were very bound up with them, because another thing that I learned recently was that game in Enniskeane, the one where Seamus McEnany said to Pat, "Did you get those boys out of prison?" Because they were short, Pat Gilroy asked Cluxton to come as the sub-keeper, and he played him at right corner forward. And Dublin got 7 frees that night in terrible weather, and Cluxton converted all 7 of them, which was why Cluxton became the free taker, and then scored the famous free against you, Tomás, in 2011. And I think that as important as his kicking out and his generalship of the square and the calmness that he brings, and the fact that you never have these crazy moments that you have with all the other goalkeepers who are playing way out the field.
I think that's the biggest part of it is the calming effect he has on the rest of the whole Dublin team. Like, it's not necessarily, he's probably not the same influence with his own kickouts in terms of distance and everything else, but number one, he's getting them away, and number two, they're much more comfortable with him in there. Like,
also the high standards that he demands. He's a ruthless guy when it comes to that, and there's no bullshit. Like,
do you think they're the same Dublin team that they were, Conor? You played against that Dublin team and their pomp.
They're probably not. They're probably not just as.
Doesn't mean they can't win in All Ireland, says you.
Doesn't mean they can't win in All Ireland. They're a better Dublin team this year than they were last year. That probably goes without saying. The fact that you have Cluxton back, you have Paul Mannion back, you have Jack McCaffrey back. So they're definitely a stronger team than they are last year. And if you take the semi-final, Con didn't play the semi-final last year as well. So they're definitely stronger than they were last year. But I would say probably David Clifford's even better than he was last year too. So that's a major problem on the other side.
There's one big thing, and you have Jack McCaffrey and you have Kieran Kilkenny. Bugler missed the last game, and I think Bugler was a huge presence in that half-forward line for everything. So Dublin started the last game against She, Conor, with arguably, Mannion was out in the wing, Small was out in the half-forward line. They're inside men. Do you have to start Kilkenny for the final?
I would say so. I think Niall Scully got an early black against us, and Dublin probably were treading on eggshells with him a wee bit. Didn't want him to obviously get sent off, so it was probably to our detriment that he got the black card, because Kieran Kilkenny came in very early into the game. He came in maybe 15-20 minutes into the game, and had a big impact on it. Again, he's very much like Cluxton in the sense that he calms them down. He's a set play for them when he's on the ball. He's a sort of a set play within the game, and I can't see how they won't start him now. Listen, they could argue that they'll bring it down to half time or 40 minutes and get that kick from Kilkenny when he comes in, but it's hard to see. If Bugler's not fit, it's hard to see how you don't start him.
Yeah, and he has inflicted pain. I think it would rattle the Kerry fellas more if Kilkenny started than if he didn't start.
I mean, the reason that Kilkenny was dropped was because of playing laterally and backwards. Since Pat Gilroy has come back in, I said he was the most overqualified water boy in the history of the GAA. But since he has come back in, and he was there that night.
It's hard to hide him as he's 6'4", is he?
Who?
Gilroy, as a water boy, I'm saying. He blocked a few views.
He's bigger than that. He's bigger than that. He's a huge big man. But I was supposed to meet him for dinner that night after the Celtic Park match, and he didn't appear for the dinner because, as I understand it, he had them for 3 hours, cutting them to pieces after the game. Because that night they were 8 points up against us, and they lost it through, in the second half. It was very like their surrender to Mayo in the semi-final 2 years earlier, and I think they've diagnosed part of the problem is Kieran playing laterally and backwards and holding the play up. They want to go and they want to press. And the first time since Gavin's era that they did that was the second half against Mayo. And when they did that, they really looked frighteningly good. Against Monaghan glued them up for a long time because that blanket defence, very like Derry's, it's very formidable and very, very hard to break down. And Kerry, you could see, Kerry struggled very badly against Derry's blanket defence. And the disappointing thing for me was, which is why I haven't written about it or spoken about it, is that it's hateful when Derry had to lose that game. Kerry weren't going to win it. You could see the body language. And to hand that over is something they'll regret for the rest of their lives. But back to Kilkenny, the reason that he's in the subs bench is, as I understand it, because of that lateral and backward stuff. And whenever he came on against Mayo that day in particular, Conor, he was going forward all the time. I felt that you could actually, in my mind, I felt you could see him thinking, fuck, I want to go sideways, but I better not. And
Well, there was that much
when that
space.
Dublin team
That
pressed,
second half.
I mean, it was absolutely scary watching them because they have 5 very powerful 2-footed forwards who are very quick, who are great finishers. And you put all that together, I mean, I'd say that Dublin would look at David Clifford and say, look, they'll be a lot smarter than Derry. I mean, Christy McKaig's not a cornerback. He's a converted number 6. He kept letting him onto his left foot. He then panicked and fouled, even though we had cover there. Dublin won't be like that. I mean, if I was playing against Clifford, I would simply double team him. I'd have somebody like Merchant playing right in front of him because the other Kerry forwards are not of that calibre, Tomás. I mean, I know that Clifford's exceptional, but Dublin, I think the replay, when they beat them in the replay, they said, okay, look, Clifford's going to score 5 points from play, but if we hold them to that, we're happy enough because we'll be able to win the game. And they press and press and press. So if Dublin play like that, the way they played for 10 minutes against Monaghan when they pushed up in the kick-out, and all of a sudden even Began couldn't get the kick-outs off, the way they played for 30 minutes against Mayo, I expect the Dubs to win 5, 6, 7 because I think that there's no, I mean that. I mean that sincerely, Tomás.
I know you.
I
know.
Derry were playing against. I genuinely thought that Derry, if Derry had been smarter about handling Clifford, I genuinely thought that Derry, for all the fact that we don't have stellar forwards, we don't have a Conor McManus, we have no one of that capability. I thought because of our game that we had a brilliant chance to beat Kerry, and I was bitterly disappointed that we didn't. But if we'd gotten to the final, I would be saying, I think we'll lose 6, 7, 8, 9 points,
I think you think that Derry would lose to Dublin.
Yeah, by 6, 7, 8, 9 points, I think.
I don't know, Joe.
They have so many weapons, and once they would push up on our kick-out, we would find it very difficult because Lynch's kick-outs are erratic. He lacks that stellar confidence of a Began or a Cluxton, and you can go after his kick-out. I mean, Monaghan proved that up in Celtic Park, Conor, that day. You should have beaten us that day, to be fair.
Yeah.
I thought you were comfortably the better team than us at a packed Celtic Park and a brilliant atmosphere. And, that's another thing. You can never take a Monaghan team for granted because they've got courage and character.
I turned around, Joe, halfway through the Kerry-Derry game, halfway through the second half. I don't know who's sitting beside me, and I just said, we're gone here. We're in trouble here. We're in big trouble.
Absolutely. Jack O'Connor thought that as well. I watched it on the TV afterwards, and you could see his body language. He thought we're gone. 65 minutes, we're gone. And that's the shame of it because
I thought McGuigan I thought played very well. I didn't think he would have the impact he did, even though he's had a bigger impact in certain games. I didn't think they get the spread of scores that they did from other players. And I thought that Kerry would defend him a lot more. But I do think I would be disappointed that last 5 minutes, Joe. I thought Derry would do better they couldn't. That 4 or 5 minutes was, and you can talk about the soft free. The one thing, and this is where I'd like to ask you, Conor, the one thing, like they pressed up, they got 2 frees, they pressed up. And then there was a point from play from Stephen O'Brien, and they still pressed up. I know it's nearly impossible to push up on every kick out. How, like, do teams have certain areas, times in the matches? Yeah, we're going after them here, we're not going after them there. Or how does it work out like? What was your plan going out against the Dubs like?
Yeah, well, we were possible. Like, I suppose Derry play a certain game whereby they control the game that much, and like if Derry turn you over in their defence, they're not necessarily breaking up the field at 100 mph to get a score. They nearly let you get back, let you get set up, and then they'll move you around and shift you around and get their scores. And when they're doing that, they have nearly 14 men inside your 65-yard line. So for them, it's not a difficult job to get pressed up because they've so many in your half of the field already. Not every team plays like that, and I suppose to it'll be different. Obviously, this week with Kerry and Dublin, they're not going to be as, I suppose, that many numbers involved in their attack. They'll play more orthodox, and there'll be probably more kicking involved. So there will be opportunities to get kickouts away. Obviously, after set pieces, every team will squeeze after a set piece, after a free kick or a 45 or whatever it is. That's the chance you have to get squeezed, and you've seen it with Dublin. I think when we conceded the kick out in the corner, or conceded the free in the corner, I think we were blown for picking it off the ground. Paul Mannion took his time. Dublin got set up. He kicked the free, and they have 12, 14 men inside our 65 squeezing the kick out. So after dead balls and after set pieces, you can expect both teams to be full press. But there's other times in the game where you're not going to have numbers up, and you just have to concede. And both Dublin and Kerry play defensive styles. Like Dublin, in our first attack, we won the throw in our first attack. It was 15 men behind the ball. We took a shot out from outside the 45. The ball hit the post, and away they went. And Kerry under Paddy Tally has obviously adapted the same approach where they're defending with 13 and 14 men. So both teams will camp out when they need to. But after set pieces is the big one.
I mean, the shame for Derry was that we didn't deal at all with Clifford. It was as though we didn't know what Clifford was like. That was the shame of it. Because, with the fact that we have limited forwards, individually we have limited forwards. We're very reliant on Brenton Rodgers, McKinless, Conor McCluskey. That lung burst and sprinting through the defence, timing your runs, a huge amount of rehearsal goes into that. I mean, Rory Gallagher had the grip often at 6 a.m. in the morning for a series of mornings in a row to rehearse all of that. And it's very, very difficult to deal with. But I suppose in the end, and I'm not complaining about the freeze at all, in the end, that lack of quality up front, where you really didn't have stellar forwards, did for us.
To be fair,
if we dealt with Clifford, and no man can mark him on his own, but particularly in a group defence situation like ours, Conor, you can't let him onto his left foot when he's in the right corner. Let him go to the end line. Do what the Tyrone boys did to him in the semi-final a couple of years ago. Yeah, look, he's going to score 4 or 5 points from play, but that's all he's going to score. And we're going to limit him aside from that. It wasn't just what Clifford scored. It was the number of times he was fouled, the number of scores that he set up. I mean, he must be amazed against a team like Derry that he was able to have such freedom.
But Derry or Kerry were able to kick the ball into Clifford. Derry probably made the decision that they were going after Kerry, and they played a more attacking game than I think anybody expected from Derry, and they really went after them. But
we had Ethan Doherty there, all Ethan Doherty. I mean, if we had instructed Ethan to play in front of David, it would have been virtually impossible for him to get the ball, and he's worth it. If you're going to double mark anybody in Irish sporting life, it's got to be Clifford.
We played them.
Hey son, you're marking David Clifford today. Oh, for fuck's sake, can he not pick him up?
Do you reckon? I'd ask you this, Joe. Do you reckon Scullion would mark Clifford?
Well, no, I'd put somebody like McKeever on him.
Sorry, McKeever. Sorry,
McKeever would be a lot quicker. He'd be a much pacier version of Philly McMahon with, you know, a better all round athlete and equally as ferocious. I mean, McKeever would have been perfect for him because technically McKeever was doing things that nobody else was doing. I mean, he was showing the forward where to go. He was keeping him off his good foot. You know, he was shaking him
Problem
down.
with Clifford is, boys, you just pop it in the air. Like the All Ireland final last year, Galway just launched 2 or 3 in on top of him, and he took a couple of marks.
Yeah, yeah.
Man, 6'4", like
Yeah.
No,
that's
no. I mean, look. Don't get me wrong, but he would have had a very, very, very sore ear on McKeever. McKeever took it personally. Fuck me. I mean,
I was,
I've actually like we had Mark and the Dungiven saying, and you know, we were the Ulster club champions. We fired away in All Ireland, but we used to be training away. You see, with the club, and me and McKeever were very, very close friends. Like if I got a goal off him in the Dungiven thing, you see, like you come back on the Thursday night and you go, "Flimmin' hell," because he never cursed. You see, flip sake. Jesus. I know what you did. I know what you did. You'll not be fucking doing that again. That's what he'd say to you. You'll not be fucking doing that again. I used to come, the jersey would be ripped, your togs would be ripped, you know. And McKeever would hit you, like, there's absolutely no trouble there. Like, if you got a few scores, you knew what was coming because for him, and I think, you know, you learn a lot from players like Kieran McKeever. You're taking something that I want. You're taking this from me and you're making me less because you've taken it from me. Because that's what the game is in the end, you know. It's not about the medals or the trinkets. It's about your character and finding out what sort of person you are.
I was going to
And
ask
in
you,
that,
Joe.
and in that regard, and McKeever was a stupendous athlete. He was a flying machine. He boxed for Ulster. He was so tough. He had everything. I mean, Peter Canavan said it was my misfortune to be born at the same time as Kieran McKeever. And Peter would have gone through his career without winning in All Ireland until that stellar grip came along. McKeever had retired. All those young boys came. I mean, like we Errigal Kieran were absolutely flying in the Ulster Club Championship and they walloped Crossmaglen, the great Crossmaglen team, in the Ulster Club semi-final. And they got us in the final. And like you could almost hear the groans from Errigal Kieran when they realised we won the second semi-final then. And McKeever just picked up Canada. It was like, excellent. Never gave him a kick. We walloped him because if you marked Peter Canavan out of it, you know, he was one of the, you know, one of that very small group, that elite group of the greatest players that have ever played the game. And that was McKeever, you know, and it was no trouble to him. But it doesn't take away from the fact that whenever you're playing a siege defence and everybody knows their job and you've got plenty of players who can sweep, that we did not have a sweeper in front of David Clifford. I can't understand that.
But I
I mean,
think, Joe, you
it
have
doesn't
to
make any sense to me. It doesn't make
Conor,
any sense whatsoever.
Conor touched on it. I think nobody expected Derry to go full on attack as much as they did. And to do what they did, I think very like what Monaghan did with Dublin. They kind of half surprised Kerry. Kerry want Morley in as a sweeper. He couldn't because he was engaged. They ran, I think it was when they got the extra man, they brought Lynch out. You spoke about that as well, Conor. But then when Diarmuid O'Connor went off, they actually had 2 extra men outside. And I was looking up, I remember looking up the pitch and seeing Clifford on his own above being marked 1-on-1. And then I'm thinking, Christ, if this
He wasn't getting the ball in that situation too much.
yeah,
I mean,
but
like,
Kerry had the confidence.
the great Dublin team, when the great Dublin team was pressing up, you know, the team that won the 8 All Irelands, when they were pressing up, Cian O'Sullivan was always sweeping. He would come forward a bit, but then he'd be thinking, okay, this is my guy here. I'm going to play in front of him, you know. And that was it. It was the lack of it was just common sense. You lock down Clifford, you hold him to 5 or 6 points, you win the game. And that was it.
But they
And
don't
it
want.
didn't make any sense.
Am I right in saying, Conor, that Derry did not want any spare man coming so that they'd be broken through? That they're confident enough if they lose ball up in their forward line, yeah, that's fine. There's no panic here. We've enough bodies up to track back, and the ball won't even get down to Clifford.
no. Well, that was the bit that surprised me. The sense that because it was Derry were very different to how they played Kerry to say how they played us in Ó'Sé in the Ulster semi final, like because we had very 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 limited opportunity to kick the ball at all, you know. Whereas Kerry got kicking a lot of ball, and I suppose it goes back to what Joe was saying. You know, going out to play Kerry, don't let the ball into Clifford. You know, and that was the one bit that surprised me about it. But then again, they really went after Kerry, and they had 1-11 kicked in the first half. You know what I mean? So they have put themselves in a massive position to kick on, and I suppose bar a couple of poor decisions, you know, that they really could have been in All Ireland final this weekend.
There, like there can be no excuses though. Like it was there for the grip,
Yeah,
and I do think that they'll regret it forever now, because those chances don't really come around that often.
You think they'll come
Um,
again?
well, I think if we're ruthless, there's certain players in the Derry team who have big reputations that is not matched by what they're doing. I think that, for example, if I were managing the team now, I would be having a very serious discussion with Conor Glass. Say, look, do you want to play at this level? And if you do want to play at this level, and you're going to realize your potential, if you believe you're good enough, well, then this isn't good enough. It's not good enough to be anonymous in big games time after time. All Ireland semi-final against Galway last year, All Ireland club final, All Ireland semi-final against Kerry. This drifting about around the defence, taking the easy option, playing in no man's land. You cannot be irrelevant if you're a player like that. I mean, what do you want to be an Aidan O'Shea, or do you want to be a James McCarthy? And we need to have those ruthless conversations, because we've got a situation in Derry where we have 2 or 3 players who have this big reputation now, and no one can criticise. And you're saying to yourself all the time, well, honesty is the essential quality. I mean, you've played in teams that won All Ireland's, Tomás, and there were no hiding places, because there can't be. The very team I played on, like, it was ruthless and it was aggressive, and boys would have taken your life in the training, and that was where it was, because they're going to take something very precious from us. We've got an opportunity to do this now, and we will not let them take this from us. But everybody has to play at that level, and I think that we've got a problem with 2 or 3 players now who've got this reputation, who are, all-stars in the Derry team. They got all-stars last year, and you sort of get this idea of, all-stars are bullshit, as you know. And we need a ruthless approach to that. And it's always a difficulty when you have an outside management team. I mean, our manager now is from Tyrone, and it's always a difficulty, because one of the problems there is that the manager feels that they have to be politic. They feel they have to be political, and to make sure that people are kept happy. Like, our entire team is made up of South Derry First Division players. We have no lower division players playing on the team.
Are they good enough, Joe?
Well, I think that we've got, we've got 2 All Ireland minor champions in the last 4 years now. We have outstanding club football. It's a county now that's very well organised behind the scenes. The admin structure, all those things are right now, and everything's going in the right direction. So there's no reason that we couldn't. But like all these things, you've got to be ruthless when you're taking a team. I mean, Gilroy dropped Philly McMahon in 2009. He dropped Dean Rock. He got rid of Kieran Whelan, Jason Sherlock, Shane Ryan. He just culled them ruthlessly. Absolutely ruthlessly. And if you've got a group that has the potential, unless you're ruthless and unless there's a culture of absolute honesty in the group, they're not going to succeed. Because, that old cliche is true. You're only as strong as your weakest link. And we've got fellas at the moment who are going through the motions on the field. And I was very upset. I wouldn't say disappointed, upset with some of the performances at the weekend, particularly when you see guys like McKinless and Brenton Rodgers and that, and Conor McCluskey really giving every ounce that they have, playing superhuman games. And then Brenton Rodgers was asked by Tommy Niblock, who's an awful nice fella. He said to him, do you think you get an All-Star this year? He said, I don't care about All-Stars, Do you think you're good enough to get one? He said, that's really none of my business, I'm here to play football for Derry.
Yeah, I think for what it's worth, I think they will be back. And I think with the minor team that they have, whatever it is, Joe, there's was it 5-6 years ago, you were always saying with the success that they had at schools level in particular, how come it wasn't translating? They have it translating. It seems to be a united team, to be fair. I know what you're saying there, but...
No, that's right. That is true. And there's been, but I would say that the standard in Ulster is not what it has been. Like we've won 2 Ulsters in a row. I think Conor would agree with me that we're not in a glory era of Ulster football at the moment. The last sort of great era was that Tyrone era, and then the start whenever Conor came into Monaghan and they went toe to toe with Jimmy McGuinness's Donegal. That they were epic times for football, but the standard's not what it was.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
Like,
teams in
and
Ulster
Kerry
there
or not,
that
Kerry or not, like I don't know. I would say that if you took David Clifford out of it, and possibly the goalkeeper, I'm trying to think of other Kerry players at the moment who would have made your great team. I can't think of any. Can you? No, I'm quite
I
serious
know.
about that.
I've unbelievable.
That's why I'm afraid of Dublin, because I watch those Dublin forwards and I look at James McCarthy and Fenton in midfield. McCaffrey coming back in at wing back, John Small at centre back, like a beast, a proper number 6. Like, and you look at that team and the forwards in particular, 5 of them who are powerful, 2-footed, inventive, playing for the right reasons. You think to yourself, Jesus, if those boys click, this could be the start of another 3 or 4 year bonanza for Dublin. So you better beat them, Ó'Sé.
Oh yeah, Conor, can I ask you a question?
yes.
Was the most enjoyable now for a spectator not involved, no skin in the game? The Pennos that night, was that? I know you came out the right side of it. Was that like? There's one part of it I don't like. Number one, you keep rotating. The quality of Pennos that night just stuck them. Was that? Say when that was over, was that as enjoyable as a feeling, or did you say job done, whatever?
Well, I suppose, listen, it was enjoyable, but it's enjoyable because we came out on the right side of it. If we'd been sitting in Armagh shoes, you'd be saying that's no way to end the game. And I suppose looking at it, I don't think it's a fair way to lose an All-Ireland quarter
Why
final.
not? Why not?
Penalties, but Jesus.
I'll be honest, I enjoyed it.
You can't win it after 100 minutes. If you can't win it after 100 minutes, I mean, I'd say, like, I was up. I watch football all over the place, and I was watching Knockmore against Castlebar in the league semi-final in Mayo the other night. It was lash in the rain. It was a very extremely exciting game, and it went to extra time, and then it went to penalties. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I think there's a bit of a cliche going around. Those Owler boys going around saying, "Oh no, it's no way to end it. It's no way to end the game out. It's just very unfair in the players." I don't know what's unfair about it, because I think it's a contest of skill and character. And against Armagh that day, you could see the Armagh boys' body language compared to yours, and you just felt, it was a bit like the Ulster final last year, or the Ulster final this year, which went to penalties, and Derry did Armagh. It was unbelievably exciting. I don't see what the problem is.
It is like, and to be stuck in the middle of it, like even I,
Brilliant.
Sitting watching and thinking, Jesus, there's nowhere else you'd rather be. Only stuck here now in the middle of this, you know what I mean? But that's after scoring your penalty. I didn't think it was going to be.
Then there's other boys going, "Oh fuck, don't pick me, Jesus Christ, get you fucked."
But like, what I couldn't understand, Conor, right? And I think it's wrong. There was 5 of you on your own. The management, the team were out on the opposite 65. Nobody allowed into you. And then it goes to 5, and then it goes to 6, and then it goes to 7. You're saying, fuck it, it's coming around to me here again.
I scored the first one, and I just says, well, like, my job's done, I'm happy enough, and I fucking didn't think it was going to come the second time. But funny, the Armagh changed their...
that was the worst, Conor. That was the worst.
We didn't even know you could do that. We didn't even know you could do that.
But I mean, I thought it was such mismanagement, like that. The fella who went third the first time for Armagh, he missed his penalty, and so they put him back to 5 the second time.
That had to be the lads, Joe. That could.
Well, I mean, imagine saying to somebody, right? Basically, you're saying to him, "Look, we're fucking worried about you. You've missed one already. You'll fucking probably miss another one. So we'll stick you at the end and hope we've already won it." What the fuck type of motivation is that? But again, it was all part of the great drama. I thought it was hugely dramatic that night, the penalties, and
the quality of Pennos. Oh Jesus!
Unbelievable! It's unbelievable. We have smaller nets in soccer, and we're further out.
I know Conor on the night, but as I said at the start, when you've no skin in the game, and
when you've no skin in the game, 100%, or when you win it, it's great. You know what I mean? If you're sitting there and you're in the losing side, but it is what it is. The rule is there, Look,
And to be fair, Connor, it meant that we didn't have to watch another 70 minutes of Monaghan and Armagh.
would be it's actually like the penalties in GA is somewhat of a lottery because if a keeper decides to go the right way, it's a fucking difficult enough job to squeeze it by him. You know what I mean?
Your penalties that night were absolutely top class. I think one of your lads missed the first time around, the first 5. But he stuck his penalty away to some tune the second time.
Yeah, fairness to him, like, because
And
it's not easy to come back up after.
that's what sport is. It's all too often in our game, particularly Gaelic football and like the hurling, instead of we tend to overlook that this is an entertainment. We have huge amounts of spectators coming to be entertained. And are they not entertained when they see an epic penalty competition? I mean, I tell you, in the Ulster final this year, after what was a fairly turgid game of football, extremely defensive, extremely lateral, I mean, the excitement, the vast tension around the penalty shootout, I mean, it was brilliant. I was thinking, oh, this is great. Also, you know that Armagh always lose a penalty shootout, because they just put far too much pressure on themselves.
Do you ever
And
take a penalty, Joe?
you boys must have been thinking that.
Do you take penalties, Joe?
The odd time, but there were very few penalties. I mean, in our day, you had to be absolutely butchered to get a penalty. It had to be sort of verging on manslaughter. Third degree murder.
I was going to ask you another question.
There were actually very few penalties when I was playing.
Would you like? I know you played back in the day, and you played before. I'd say we crossed over at the very end of your career. Would you like to play and prepare? Before I asked this question, I actually would say the way you see fellas now. We spoke about the Limerick hurlers and specimens of men, obviously S and C, hugely. Would you like to play in the era now?
Well, it's impossible to know. I mean, I played until I was 42, and I was fully intended to play on. And by that stage, I'd actually got a personal trainer. I was playing for the club. I was flying. The day that I got crippled, I got a suicide pass from James Lockery, who went down to Cork then, and because he was so guilty, he couldn't look me in the face after that suicide pass. So that's a joke. I just want to take that back, but I was disgusted. I had a broken shoulder, a broken collarbone, and I thought, all right, well, that was it. You sort of sleep standing up for a few nights at the radiator, and I'd grown to really love and respect the game. So yes, the answer is yes. I would if I was because we trained like demons and we did all those things. We just didn't have the assistance that's available nowadays. I mean, I look at, for example, the Dublin group and the sort of assistance they have and the sort of, intelligent management and training and all of that. And you think to yourself, wow, imagine if you had all of that, how you would have better appreciated the game, better understood, what it was about and the importance of it and all of those things. You were largely, when I was playing, left to your own devices. I mean, Enda Gormley said to me, and Enda trained like a demon. He said to me, I only found out when I started taking the Glen Mahara teams that I'd spent my whole career absolutely dehydrated. No, but you know what I mean. Things like that, like the nutritional side, that we would sort of eat sensible. You don't eat like cheeseburgers and stuff, but you eat sensibly. But that's true. Enda said that. He said I only realized once I started. He was sort of behind that whole revolution in Glen, that led to them being into, the All Ireland Club final and winning the Ulster Club and all of that. They were the first team, and I think it'll never happen again. They won 4 Ulster Club minor titles in a row through the systems that Enda was employing and everything that was being done. And he said that, he said, I realised that I spent my entire career hopelessly dehydrated.
I'm going to put it to you, Conor. I spoke to somebody close enough to the Mayo set up after they beat Kerry in Killarney, and he put it to me that the plan Mayo had was hold Tom Sullivan, hold Gavin White, we'll bait him middle of the park and limit Clifford to whatever you can. He's going to score, he's going to hurt you, limit him, and you have to run at him. You have to. Is it that easy? Or Can Kerry, I'm basically asking you to call it in such a way. That's the way Mayo approached it. Is that the way you see it panning out?
I can understand the Mayo game plan, obviously, but I suspect that Kerry could be just coming into this under the radar nicely. You know, that they didn't play overly well against Derry. Dublin, listen, I suppose the last 10 minutes of the game against us, I think we all seen the real Dublin, and if Dublin bring that for 70 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever it is, it's going to be very hard to live with. But I think there's the team, particularly Kerry, will probably even have learned a bit from our game against Dublin. I think if you go at breakneck pace against Dublin for 70 minutes, they will. I don't think anybody can live with them. You know what I mean? So I think you need to slow the game down a bit and sort of make it into a game that Dublin don't particularly enjoy. And Kerry have the tools to do that with Shane Ryan coming out the field. To call it, I just don't know who is going to listen. Obviously, Dublin would be sitting in their dressing rooms and their meeting rooms this week with a plan for David Clifford and allow him 4 points or 5 points from play. Do they have to bring somebody like James McCarthy back and sit in front of him, or Brian Howard or something like that to double team him? I can't see how you can play him unless you double team him.
Probably Merchant. Because he's so quick, he's absolutely electric, and he just I mean, I remember
but they have to
James McHugh, Connor from Donegal, who used to do that role for Jimmy McGuinness.
Or Mark McHugh,
and he wasn't it James? Not James.
Mark McHugh.
Mark, sorry. Mark James was his uncle, of course.
If they don't double team Clifford, I think Kerry could win this game.
But lads, you have two goalies, right? Began used to come out, Lynch would come out. Cluxton won't, Ryan won't come out. Now Ryan comes out the odd time, granted, but not in a way as a tactical. He'll come out the odd time, right? But I think they'll stay back in. I think they're both going to cough up the sweeper because I think Kerry are a lot more comfortable with Morley sitting. I think the Dubs will sit Davy Byrne or whoever it is, Merchant, whoever it is, sit back. So I think both teams are going to give each other the sweeper. Joe, do you think, and to be fair, the last two teams standing, Dublin and Kerry, do, from a goal conceding point of view, have the meanest defences left. If it comes down to defences, who has the best defence?
Well, I think just as we saw with Limerick and Kilkenny in the hurling, as soon as Limerick went after them, as soon as Limerick just went up to battle speed, okay, now's the time we're going to go after them. Then there was only one team. And I predicted before the game, and I'm quite happy to ring the glamorous brunette live here to Bruce. I predicted that Limerick would win by 9 points because I couldn't see any way with Kilkenny's lack of quality. For all the fact that they'll give every ounce that they have in their bodies and they'll leave nothing behind, as Kilkenny always do, I just couldn't see any way that they could compete with Kilkenny. So I thought 9 points. That's what I predicted, genuinely. And on Sunday, I think the Dubs will win by 6. I think that if they push up, and you'd have to be certain that they will do that after their experience against me, after 2 years of lethargy with Desi Farrell. I think Desi was very bad for the Dubs. I think that they became a lateral, slow-moving team, not backing themselves. Pat Gilroy calls it, he says what we need to do is balls out football. And that's how you win. I mean, whenever Tyrone won their 3 All-Irelands in the noughties, they just went for it. They said, okay, look, we've got some of the greats of the game, Tomás, Ó'Sé, Colin Cooper, they're all there. Fuck them. And when Dublin did that against Mayo, and in the last few minutes against Monaghan, you could see, right, this is scary because they've got the players to do this. And I mean, I look at the individual matchups, and you think to yourself, well, who would you rather have playing on your team? Starting with Cluxton, you look at the midfield, Fenton and James McCarthy. You've got 5 stellar forwards, and then another, probably Paddy Small. I suspect they'll drop Scully because he's gone through a terrible patch, and he seems to have lost his confidence completely. And last year with Kerry having so much more advantages than Dublin, and Dublin playing with a sort of an experimental team in a way, playing very slowly and laterally. If Davy Byrne hadn't committed a stupid foul, knowing that the best free taker in the game was playing for Kerry and was likely to slot it over, the Dubs would probably have won that match in extra time, because for most of the second half it was the Dubs. So I suspect that the Dubs will win by about 6.
I was confident.
We'll probably go on to win a couple more. I my main concern is that Kerry don't have a companion for Clifford.
Yeah.
They don't have a companion for Clifford. Like Paul Guinea, I think's over the hill. Dara Moynihan, players like that. Look, don't get me wrong, they're good players, but not at that sort of standard. And I think that the only Kerry forward, probably Sean O'Shea would get in because it was massive free take, and he'd take over the Dean Rock role. But apart from David Clifford, there's no other Kerry forward that would get into the Dublin forward line.
I'd stick Paddy Clifford in there.
And I don't think I totally disagree with you. He reminds me of Declan O'Sullivan. He slows the game up, solo. He got absolutely nowhere against Derry. He might as well not have been playing. Don't get me wrong, he's a good, decent footballer, but I'm talking about that stellar quality.
Yeah.
I mean, would you pick him ahead of Conor Callahan?
I'd argue no. Well, I'm not going to go. I'd argue that point. It was the same as what match last year in semi-final that he was nullified as well. But if you look back at the game, even against Derry, Joe, Paddy Clifford, he's never bait. If you look back clip by clip, phase by phase, he was still involved in the game. I know he popped over one point. He put in good ball to David. He's never beat. He's got the right temperament in terms of.
Oh yes, don't get me wrong, but I think it's absolutely certain that if David Clifford weren't playing for Kerry now, this miracle, who's for me the greatest footballer that's ever played the game already. I mean, who could forget him scoring 4-4 from playing his last All-Ireland minor final against Derry, and the whole Derry defence marking him. Sweet mother. I mean, you just sat there thinking to yourself, thank God I'm alive to witness this miracle. And that's what it's like. But without him, make no mistake, you wouldn't have an All-Ireland last year, and you wouldn't be in an All-Ireland final this year. I mean, he is the difference. And I suppose the massive test for Kerry will be if anything happens. I mean, that day he got injured against Tyrone in the semi-final, that was the end of it. He got the suicide pass from Sean O'Shea, and that was it. It was all over. Everybody knew it. Body language, you could see it. Game over.
My own reading of it is
incredible. And he never gets injured.
No,
I mean, not only can he do all the things that Conor was talking about. I mean, he would be a wonderful professional athlete because nothing phases him. I mean, I was watching that documentary about Patrick Mahomes, the great quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I kept thinking of Clifford. This guy who just enjoys it all, takes it in a stride, rocks up to his first All-Stars wearing a turtleneck. How you going? And who effortlessly does these things that amazes us, and we say, Jesus Christ of Almighty, how does any human being do that? But to do it day after day, knowing that I'm responsible for this, and if I don't perform, we will lose.
He never doesn't do it.
He's absolutely extra. He took a day off. Conor, against Tyrone, because Tyrone were so abject.
Yeah.
You could see him thinking, I'm not going to bother my hole here. And he scored his first point in the 60th minute from play. And you could just see him thinking this doesn't require me to push myself here the day. I'll let the lads at it.
He always does it, Conor, even in the bad.
What age is he now? About 23, Tomas. What age is he?
24, is he?
Sweet mother.
He's ridiculous. He's like if he I actually think he's probably the best player to ever play already. But I suppose people will argue that he doesn't have enough All-Irelands and everything else. But just purely from what he can do and what he it's his consistency.
Wouldn't it be brilliant if he was your son? You were just going, oh my God, thank you God, this is absolutely fantastic. Who are you playing tonight, son? Oh great, Oh, how did your son get on? Oh, he only scored 2-7. Quiet enough night.
But you said it, Conor.
He goes and wins an All-Ireland. He goes and wins an All-Ireland junior title with his club. And that was ferocious. I mean, Sherstown gave them everything and gave them more than that. It was, and some of their behaviour was a scandal in the attack on body and all that. And he just rises above it all. And then he plays for East Kerry, and they win 2 or 3, county championships in Kerry in a row. And you think to yourself, It's
The funny thing about that game, and again in the All Ireland club final, was there was other forwards shooting, and you were just wondering why the fuck are you shooting? Just give it.
it's like the great story that Jorge Valdano told about being in the dressing room with Maradona. Carlos Menotti was the manager, and they were coming up to the World Cup, and they were training away, and Maradona was doing his usual miracles, you see, and they came in for the team meeting, and Carlos said, Diego, could you step outside? Valdano said, Menotti said, gentlemen, how often must we give the ball to Maradona? And he said, he put up his hand and he said, well, I think it's a team game type of thing. I think we must, not put too much responsibility on him, etc., etc. There was a bit of that going on in Menotti. He said, nonsense. We must give him the ball every time. And I can never understand that Kerry don't give him the ball more.
Yeah.
Suppose he might get exhausted. One thing I did notice about him, Conor, I don't know if you agree with this, was I've noticed last year and the previous year that, I think it's probably because of the amount of work that he's asked to do, that come the last 10 minutes, he tires out. He's a big man, like.
He is.
I thought he was noticeably tired against Galway in the last 10 minutes last year, and then the other players took over at that stage and Galway sort of crumbled. And the same the previous year against Dublin in the semi-final. I thought he tired out.
He never stops moving. He never stops moving. If you watch him, like he is always on the move. Even when balls down the other end of the field, he's pulling his full back or his defender here, and he's pulling them there, and they're just working them all the time, moving them in and out, over and back. Not a bit of wonder he's fucked at the end of a game. As well as that, everything Kerry wanted to get the ball, they want to give it to him too, which is totally understandable.
His positional sense is wonderful too. Like,
if David Clifford doesn't perform at the weekend, will Kerry lose the game?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll get stuffed. Imagine, like, if Clifford pulled his hamstring in the first minute or two. Like, the day, remind me which game it was, boys. I think it might have been against Galway last year in the semi. Or no, which was the day that he hurt his ankle really early on last year in the championship, and he was limping heavily, and he just kept playing.
Yeah,
and eventually he seemed. Who was that against?
I can't remember who.
Do you remember he hurt his ankle and everyone went, "Oh Jesus!" and he was limping and he was.
It was a quarterfinal, wasn't it? It was a quarterfinal.
Yeah, who did they play in the quarterfinal last year? But again, there it was. I mean, he pushed through. He pushed through the pain barrier, and he's got all of that as well. That sort of leadership. He's an armor-plated leader as well. Like, bring it on, give it to me. Whatever you've got, give it to me. And is that all you've got? Is that all you've got? He's got that defiance as well. And the other thing that he has on top of all of that is tremendous discipline. He never gets sent off, no matter what's put up to him. Like, tremendous discipline.
Joe, you're calling it. You're calling it Dublin by 6. Conor, what are you calling it?
I think David Clifford will perform. I think he always does. So I'm going to go Kerry by 2.
And I'm going to go Kerry by 4. And are you all going to the game, lads? You are?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Look, lads, it was a great way to finish season 4 and the build up to this weekend's All-Ireland football final. I know, Conor, you'll be fierce disappointed you're not there, and I'd say a lot more people are fierce disappointed not seeing you tug out an All-Ireland final. Thanks to Joe, thanks to Conor. It was an absolute pleasure.
Just before you finish, whenever Derry won the All-Ireland, I was invited down to the Clontibret club with the Sam Maguire, and a very young baby-faced Conor McManus got a picture with me sitting on my knee with the Sam Maguire. Isn't that right, Conor?
That's right, yeah. That's right, 93, down in Castlesheen at Declan Brennan Motors, yeah.
That was the start of it, Conor. Your hero, Joe.
Well, he didn't win it All-Ireland, but he will forever be remembered forever. Gaelic football is watched and played, and an absolute credit to his club and his county and the way that he conducted himself in the field. What a career!
We're not going to put you. He mightn't be finished yet, and we're not even going to ask that question. Thanks to EIRGRID for sponsoring the show, and thank you to everyone that has listened throughout the season. If you want to listen back any episodes, you can click on the link in the bio. Lads, go Míle Maith, and let's hope that we have a great All-Ireland weekend and everybody behaves themselves in the capital city. Go Maith.
Cheers, Tomás.
Thanks again to our sponsor, EIRGRID, proud supporters of the EIRGRID Under-20 All-Ireland Football Championship and leaders in Ireland's pursuit of a cleaner energy future. Don't forget to follow, subscribe and review. Go Míle Maith.